Welcome to people who are joining the room. I'm starting slowly. We're just getting started. But if you've come for the launch of the Folio website, you're in the right place. So we've had actually, I think it was more than 260 registrations for today. So I imagine there's a bit of a crowd coming into the Zoom room at the moment. I'll let you jostle in. And I wish we could see you. And I wish we could see what I imagine is people from the comics community, researchers, archivists, maybe some of our colleagues in government. And by my clock, it's now 12:01, so I might get started more formally now. So this is a more formal welcome to the launch of the Folio website. My name's Kristen Cornell, and I'm Manager of Research Partnerships at Creative Australia. I'll start today's webinar by acknowledging that unless you're overseas, we're all joining from traditional lands. I'm joining from Gadigal country on Sydney Harbour, and I pay my respects to the elders of this country, past and present. Feel free, of course, to acknowledge the countries from which you're all joining in the chat. It can be a really nice way to kind of start the conversation, say hello, let people know who's here, where you're coming from. And on that, I'd also like to acknowledge any First Nations people who are joining us in the webinar today. Thanks also to our Auslan interpreters who will be providing a translation of the discussion. So when I started in this role at Creative Australia a few years ago, when we were called the Australia Council for the Arts, this project was one of the first that was handed over to me from my predecessor. I think we were at the stage of signing contracts, and for me it was this exciting partnership that was going to build a website to introduce the contemporary history of Australian comics to all those who did not yet know. The project was led by 4 comics academics, Elizabeth McFarlane from the University of Melbourne, Ronnie Scott from RMIT, and Pat Grant and Gabrielle Clark from UTS, all of whom were deeply embedded in the comics community. The National Library of Australia was also a partner organisation, and the project was funded by the Australian Research Council's linkage scheme. So I was like, what a very cool linkage project. So such a great kind of welcome to my new role. So I'm not just being really formal when I say that I'm delighted to be introducing the launch of the Folio website today. It's not just formalities. This project has been a delight to work on as a partner throughout. And then I think, as you'll see, when you start to roam and sift and drift, that's the term that researchers use, as you roam and sift and drift your way through the site, the final product is a really lovely, humble monument to creativity and community. In addition to the Folio site, the project involved this fantastic archival project in which the Folio team collected over 500 comics and zines from around the country and provided these to the National Library of Australia for inclusion as part of their catalogue. These 500 plus comics and zines are now available to request from the National Library. And the Folio site is also going to be archived in the library's Australian Web Archive. Heather Clark, the Director of Curatorial and Collection Research at the National Library of Australia, is attending the webinar today. Thanks, Heather, for your contributions to the project. And thanks also, in addition to those 4 researchers I mentioned earlier, Liz McFarlane, Ronnie Scott, Pat Grant, Gab Clark, thanks also to Meg O'Shea, who I understand was brought on as a research assistant to the project and quickly became an essential part of the Folio team. Today's webinar is going to run for 90 minutes, and it's kind of in 3 sections. It includes, firstly, an introduction to the site from the research team, and then a panel discussion with 3 artists, Safia Ahmed, Meg O'Shea, Ashkar, and this will be chaired by Bernard Kaleo. And then there'll be a Q&A at the end with questions from all of you to inform the discussion. And we're also going to be leavening the event with intermittent trivia quizzes to make sure that you're listening. But I'm leaving that component with the very competent, playful, and funny Pat Grant. So I'm signing off now. Feel free to talk in the chat. But if you have any questions for the speakers at the end, please put those in the Q&A because it kind of separates them from the chat and makes it easier for us to kind of pull them out and use them. I'll return if I'm needed, but otherwise, I think I'll hand it over now to the comics crew.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Kristen. I believe Ronnie is sharing screen now. Hopefully everyone can see that.
Yeah.
Um, I am already getting emotional because I'm seeing everyone's hellos streaming through the chat and all the different country that everyone is on today. And it's just a beautiful thing to see. I think some of those messages had only been coming through to the hosts and panelists. So if you want everyone to see what you're saying, make sure you click on that little blue thing and switch it to everyone. My name is Liz, and I'm here on beautiful Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country here in Naarm on unceded land of the Kulin Nation. And I want to express my deepest respect and gratitude to Wurundjeri elders, past and present, for their care for country for many thousands of years. I really want to say a few quick thank yous first before I start talking about the site. Maybe Ronnie, if you could go back to the nice picture by Claudia, thank you. A huge thank you, first of all, to Kristen, who you just heard from, Kristen Cornell, and the whole Creative Australia team, who has been our research partner right from the beginning. And they've given us so much incredible, wonderful support all throughout the project. So thank you so much. I also want to thank Kerno Craig, who invested in the project way back when we were applying for the grant. And a huge thank you to our web design team, who has made the Folio site a living thing that was in our imaginations first. And these are the people who made it into a thing that you can actually see. So that's Pat Calusi at Public Web Design in Sydney, and the team at Supermarket Web Design in London, who are Will and Hamish McLean and Johnny Crisp. Thank you so, so much for making our dream come true. Um, this project was also assisted by a whole raft of people, including Meg O'Shea, who Kristen mentioned before, who is just one of the greatest people in the world and has really carried a huge amount of work on this project. And we just all love Meg so dearly. A huge thank you also to our other research assistants, Ada Connor, who did almost all of our transcription work, as well as the editing work of Leonie Briley, Sarah Richardson, Claudia Chinera Cole, Mia Nee, and Daniel Pilkington. And I also want to thank our steering committee, who helped guide the decision making of the project at key moments: Keenan Muir, Brenton McKenna, David Blumenstein, Queenie Chan, Siobhan Coombs, and Salagna Majumdar. Thank you so much to all of those people. Um, okay, we can start going through the slides now, Ronnie, thanks. So Folio started, like a lot of things, with people sitting around in a room eating sandwiches and chatting. So Pat and I had been running the comic art workshop for a few years, and we had many conversations about how the comics community in Australia feels like a kind of vast underground network of mushroom-like interconnected people and ecologies. And once you're invited in, or you find a kind of smuggler's tunnel into this network, you get to see the thriving nature of this community. It's full of drawing nights, workshop groups, studios, risograph presses run out of suburban sharehouses, zines printed secretly in uni basement libraries, indie comics festivals, giant cons, little local comic shops, public libraries, graphic novels that take 10 years to make, live comic readings, and always that one person at the big book publisher or the big literary festival who actually knows what a comic
Yes.
is. Uh, we'll go to the team slide now, Ronnie. So here we are, Pat, Gabe, Ronnie, and I. We all work at universities. Pat and Gabe work in the design discipline, in design and visual communication and animation, whereas Ronnie and I work in creative writing departments. And we all teach comics at our respective universities. And we also work with a lot of people who sadly have not yet come into contact with the fungal comics network, and they can't seem to find their way in. So we started to talk about building something led by the voices of our community, the artists, the publishers, the organisers, the retailers, the librarians. We wanted to build a place of encounters where anyone who has an interest in Australian comics can come to hear stories told by the people who make up this community. Another one of our recurring conversations, we'll go to the Bernard slide, is about this central tension that exists between love and money in Australian comics. Bernard said this years ago, 2014, the economy of comics is obsession and unreasonable love. And I drew a picture of him saying it. He said it in one of my classes. He wasn't wearing suspenders when he said it, but he has, you'll see, he has like suspender energy. So that's why I drew them on him. And this quote really meant so much to me that I wrote an essay about it, which you can read on our site. But it's this tension that came up again and again in our conversations with artists. I talk about love a lot in my work. I don't really know how else to describe how I feel about the medium of comics and the people that I've met through comics. And I'm also a strong believer in refusing to sideline emotion and the personal in my work. Love drives me. And in our conversations with the comics community, we heard again and again that it's love and passion for comics that drives others as well. And here's the tension. And if we go to the Campbell White slide, you can see Campbell and a bunch of other people talked about this. But Campbell puts it really eloquently here. There's such little prestige to be gained from making comics in Australia. On the one hand, that's awful, but on the other hand, it's kind of brilliant. There's no ladder to climb, there's just the ground, and everyone's standing on it. So while that economy of love is what makes the Australian comics community completely unique and allows it to tell stories that you can't find anywhere else, our hope is also with a project like this that more readers and more awareness might also build more opportunities, more consistent infrastructure, greater support, and more publishing outlets for our brilliant, brilliant Australian comic artists. I'm going to hand over now to Gabe, who's going to talk to you about the interview process.
Thanks, Liz. Um, so hello from Dharawal country down here in North Wollongong. Here with Pat in sunny Dharawal country. And yeah, I would like to pay my respects to the Dharawal people, First Nations people who are listening and watching and all over the world, but also for the role I think that is storytelling in our lives and how storytelling is so important. And I feel that this is like an extension of all these kind of ways that we tell stories and how we sort of transfer knowledge and how we transfer information, but also importantly, how we get community. So I'm going to talk a bit about the interviews. And so we have interviewed roughly is it up to 50 different creators from Australia from a sort of blurry defined period from 1980 to 2020. And these are people who are working or have worked in the Australian comics community for that amount of time. And the it was an attempt at not to kind of canonize or to kind of be a really clear database of the comics in Australia, but just to show the range and breadth of community, and but also to think to show how that community works and also what they're making. And I think it's really what we kind of came to through the interview process is this idea of stories. So instead of a sort of chronological kind of like archive that is of a definitive kind of aspect of comics in Australia, we really brought in that idea of what Liz was talking about bringing the personal into this sort of history and this sort of narrative. So wanting to hear these anecdotal kind of experiences about the love, about the obsession, and about those elements. So you can see on the screen, this isn't all of the people we interviewed, but just some of them. And we had the pleasure of trying to run face-to-face go interviews, but a couple on Zoom. In selecting the interviews, we had a steering committee, which is the next slide, Ronnie. Thank you. Who, along with this awesome group of people, Brenton McKenna, Conan Murr, Queenie Chan, David Blumenstein, and we also had Solinger and Siobhan. They helped us sort of sort of guide, I guess, our choices to ensure that we're not kind of looking into our own kind of biases when we're selecting these artists. But what was really great about that was all of these people have a really different sort of level of expertise within this community and a very good lens. It was really lovely to have that kind of other kind of side. So it isn't just us kind of popping, going, oh, what about this guy? And what about that? It was lovely to be able to sort of put this out to other people so we can get some feedback on that. The next slide, Ronnie. And so what the actual process of interviewing was really about centering on an artifact. And so the idea here was to try and get that idea of sort of sentimental objects, the objects that have meaning for a person from particularly in inner life and making comics. And so we would set up, we'd approach the person and then we'd send them a little questionnaire asking them to prepare for the interview. So we're looking at artifacts from the time in making comics, but also mementos. So there could be flyers, it could be a photograph, it could be an object, it could be a draft of a comic. And so we really weren't too didactic about what we wanted, but we just wanted something that had meaning for the interviewer. And in order to do that, we were really clear that we wanted to focus the site around the objects. And so this isn't necessarily a talking heads kind of interview process. This is actually pointing a camera down and recording the objects as we were talking over the objects. So we recorded voice, and the imagery we recorded was actually just hands coming under a camera and turning pages or pointing at things or holding an object. And that, I think, is a really great way to disarm people. But it also talks to this idea of object elicitation, what objects can reveal. There is this academic who's got a brilliant academic name called Igor Kopitov, and he talks about objects having meaning. An object's meaning, value, and role shifts across the course of a personal life. He talks about this idea of a singularization, where it moves from a commodity where you buy or you get the object, and then to singularization where it becomes embedded. And I think that's kind of really kind of like what we were sort of hovering around and playing with these objects and asking questions. Next slide, Ronnie. There you go. That's us in real life doing it. We did as much as we could. We did the interviews with the artists face to face. There are a few Zoom panels we also did. But mostly it was face to face, flying around the country, or people coming to universities for us to allow us to kind of engage with them. So Perth, Darwin, Hobart, Sydney, Melbourne, and it was really kind of a special kind of process. We're seeing people's sort of vulnerability. There are lots of tears often come out in just looking and talking at around these objects. Next slide, Ronnie. Questions that we kind of asked were the kind of questions that we thought we were interested in. So we wanted to know about that period of 1980 to 2020. So what was happening in the culture then? Australian comics, we're really interested in the idea of someone might have a favorite panel or of a comic that they want to show from Australian comics. There are barriers and also material. So all of these kind of questions broadly looked at the themes that we are interested in as researchers. And then you can see here are the hands. Here's us looking at objects. So everything from comics to, sculptural objects to also sort of old photographs from people's time in comics. So a lot of people brought in old photos. Other people just brought in comics, and it was a really great way and even data visualizations of how people are making money. So a lot of people brought in old sort of how do you make money in comics and their kind of paperwork that they had around that. And the next is, so that's kind of me summarizing our process and our objects that we collected. Next, Pat, and he's going to talk around the site design.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see so many familiar names in the coming into the chat. I've sort of played a sort of role in the background on the Folio project. Do you want to go to the next slide, Ronnie? I sort of realized at the beginning that we kind of needed an intermediary between the humanities and the web developers. So I sort of decided that maybe I was the guy to do that job, and I had to sort of teach myself to program in JavaScript, which was a real delight, and and it was also really difficult. And so what we're looking at here is me doing some early prototypes of the website to see if we could kind of like what I feel like we're adding that it may be a bit new is that kind of connective tissue between all the stories, images, and artifacts that we've collected. You know, Liz described it as a kind of mycorrhizal fungi, and I think the links between the nodes in this fungi are sort of technology dependent, and that's kind of what I really worked at over many years. Can we go to the next slide, Ronnie? So this is another prototype where that Meg made in Figma, and here we're sort of trying to sort of like express the data that we've collected in different ways. Let's go to the next one, Ronnie. Here's our website, which again, like this is the one that you can find online now. But that sort of like we got that developed by a web development team. But we did a huge amount of work in the background, organizing the data. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, this gives us the horrors. There is a data architecture behind this all, which is what helps you kind of drift from story to story and not feel like it's a linear or didactic process, kind of moving through like all of the stuff we've collected over these years. I'm really proud of it. I had that feeling of drifting this morning where I was kind of like clicking from one thing to another and feeling that sense of like things that I didn't know were connected, being connected and having that be described by web architecture. Okay, we'll move on to Ronnie now. Thanks.
Thanks, Pat. Hi, everyone. And I am just joining you from Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country. And I'd like to acknowledge elders and anybody who is in the audience as well. Yeah. So it falls to me to talk about the website itself and how we kind of want people to use it. But very first of all, I wanted to show you a couple of really amazing kind of visualizations that sort of build out of what Pat was just showing you so beautifully as well. This is kind of one of the kind of many kind of bits of back-end architecture on the website, because it was a long process and we had so many ways of kind of going through the interviews and the things that people said, and pulling out, you know, kind of different themes and ideas and exploring ways that people might want to get to know the story of Australian comics through the Folio website. And one of the stages was in Miro. And Miro is sort of a data visualization and organization website that you can share with people. And so we would have these transcripts, which would then kind of be written up into basically like written oral histories. They would sort of be chunked into different stories, which is very close to the final form that you see on the website. But when you look at them in Miro, or when we looked at them in Miro, what we did was we basically pulled out themes. We pulled out anytime somebody mentioned a book or another artist, or you know what for a time we were calling entities. So they could be bookstores, they could be festivals, they could be kind of other bits of the world that intersect with the comics community. And you know, I think of these as archipelagos. We call them archipelagos many times because the people who were sort of more visually inclined, including one of our really great research assistants, Ada Connor, kind of started designing them into these things that look like little island chains. And so to get to this sense of drifting through the website, I think this was one of the really important kind of steps along the way. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to share instead the website itself. Give me 1 second. All right. Can everyone see that? Beautiful. All right, so this is the website itself. You access it by typing in foliocomics.com, and it's live, it's up there. And you first see this text, which invites you to open the folio, browse the themes, explore the community, and discover the unique stories of Australia's comics creators. And when you start to scroll down, you'll start to see these kind of different cards, these different introductions to people's stories. You'll see, sometimes they're talking about books, sometimes they're talking about favorite panels of other people, sometimes they're talking about things that happened to them, things that they did. Sometimes they're talking about kind of influences. Sometimes they're talking about kind of broader themes, like you can see Queenie Chan there talking about manga and indie comics in Australia. You can see that sometimes it's individual artists, sometimes it's groups of people who intersect with comics or have a lot to do with comics. There'll be booksellers eventually. There's librarians now. There's essays that we commissioned, some of which we sort of put on a holding site a couple of years ago to give people sort of an early way into the research. But some of them are brand new, and some of them are in a book published by Palgrave. You can look at whole interviews, or you can kind of find individual ways into topics or themes that people mention. I'm just going to click on one of these. So this is the Librarians Roundtable on the topic needing a list of Australian comics and artists. And you can see that it's part 3 of kind of a longer interview. This is a bunch of different librarians from around the country that were convened to talk about what it's like to connect their readers and their communities to Australian comics. You can see when you click on the interview, there's lots of those kind of beautiful in situ photos from their own archives and also from during some of the interviews. There's also this wonderful thing called, well, we call them mentions. Basically, when you click on something that is highlighted purple, it's like a little annotation, sort of these painstaking annotations that the research team did to basically, tell you what people are talking about, because sometimes comics is a bit inside baseball. And that's sometimes artists, sometimes places and things. You can see that, when you click on like down here, the Perth Comics Arts Festival, you'll see, if you don't know, that it's a major annual comics festival held in Boorloo, Perth. And then you click on it, you can go through to something that describes the entity. There are these wonderful sort of illustrations of things that that are not books with their own book covers and things like that, which are done by a lot of Australian comics luminaries. See if you can guess them from their styles, but they appear throughout the website. And then you can see down here that that PCAF, Perth Comics Festival, is mentioned in all of these kind of story chunks. The one that we just came from by the librarians, but also Campbell Wyatt, Elizabeth Marufo, Ashka, and you can see more. It comes up in an essay by Liz, in an essay by Brenton McKenna, and further story chunks, and you can go and explore those. And you can see that it's linked to all of these people and places and books. And it really goes on and on. And so you can drift, you can go from topic to topic. And that's one of the ways into the website. Another is to click search the folio up top. I think that's the way that I usually use it. If you click on interviews, stories, essays, you can see that there are all of these tags. So the tags are like decade 2000s. You can click on that and just see what anytime someone talks about what it was like to make comics in the 2000s, you can look at great panels, you can look at form and process. And so this will be useful to different scholars and different artists and different journalists and researchers, at different moments and in different ways. But you can kind of mix and match and combine them. I think that's one of the really good things. So you could combine handmade books and book design and production, or you could combine First Nations stories with Australia in comics, and that gives you a really interesting combination of mentions. And you can kind of go through and see all of the different ways that people have spoken about this or written about this. And so the material on the website is about half maybe of what we've collected, and we're still doing a whole lot more this year. And so this is the launch of about half the material that we have so far. And all of these things will keep kind of enriching and connecting and building up over time. We are going to just briefly, I think, each talk, depending on the time, each talk about a favorite part of the website. Really quickly, I'm going to type in mine, and I won't spend too long on it, and I'll throw it to Liz in a sec. But David Vodicka was one of my favorite interviews. He was the publisher of this very influential anthology series called Fox Comics in the 1980s, and I there was this bit at the end of the interview that just felt really electric in the room. And sometimes when we all kind of worked across each other's oral histories at different stages, and sometimes someone sees electricity in a bit that wasn't there for somebody else in another bit. And when I got to kind of editing this, I just really loved that it felt electric while we were having the discussion, and it seemed really electric in the writing and editing as well. He's talking about just the cultural legacy and impact of Fox Comics, which he was publishing in the 80s, a very, very different time. And then kind of towards the very, very end, I said, were book people interested in this stuff at all? And he said, no. I said, no? And he says, they totally looked down their nose at it, never had a conversation with a publisher. They weren't interesting. We were just uncool in their world. Remember, the 1980s are very different. And I said, writers? And he said, writers? And I said, yeah. He said, how do you mean? And I said, did they give you the time of day? Did they want to read the comics? And he kind of misunderstood the question. He said, you mean were they writing about our stuff? He thought I was asking about critics. But I was saying, if you were doing literary writing in Melbourne, if you were a poet, for example, would you have seen comics as part of your artistic community? And he says no. And he's not kind of just saying there were snobs towards us in the 80s or anything like that. He kind of goes on to say, well, if you'd walked into a comic store in the 1980s, and you were from a very different world, it might not have been such a welcoming place. But I think the reason I love that so much is just that it shows how much the world of comics has changed and evolved over kind of the lifespan that we're looking at in this project, when we now see it as part of the design world and the visual art world and the literary and writing world. And I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to throw it to you, Liz.
Thanks so much, Ronnie. We are over time now, so I'm going to be really fast and share my little moment. So this is from our interview with Queenie Chan, who I believe is here watching. So hello, Queenie, and thank you for this beautiful moment that has really kind of blown my mind. I wasn't part of the interview for Queenie, but I edited the interview, and so I read this very closely. You can see the book that Queenie's talking about here is not an Australian book. It's Phoenix, Volume 4 by Osamu Tezuka, the great manga artist. And during this interview, Queenie is speaking about this particular double page spread for a while. Just want to take a moment to just acknowledge the gloriousness of this double page spread of beauty. And if you read this story in the comic, in the website, Queenie says that she's drawn to these kinds of panels for the same reason that she likes drawing elaborate backgrounds. Apart from the urgency you get from this guy running, and she's talking about these black lines underneath the guy running, the characters are dwarfed by their environment. So you can see in panel 1 and panel 3, the character is really tiny in their environment. And then Queenie goes on to relate this to kind of philosophy and her belief in Taoism as well. She says, as people, and particularly in comics, we look at the world from a first-person perspective. People tend to ignore that there's a much wider world out there that is moving in mysterious ways. There's a loss of control, and I think that makes people uncomfortable. But this is how I see life. You are just a small speck in a very, very big world, and drawing characters that are dwarfed by their environment is actually a visual expression of that feeling. So as someone who's very, very interested in close reading as a literary practice, this really spoke to me, and I've been thinking about it ever since, and I think I'll probably write something about it. I'm just kind of mesmerized by the idea that such a complex and fundamental philosophy of the relationship between self and the world can be expressed with such elegance and such immediacy just through the beauty and the design and the composition of a comics page. So that's my little moment. I'm going to hand over to Gabe.
Hi, everyone. So I'm back, and I'll share my screen and make sure I've got the right page up. So 1 second, share screen, share screen. It's not an academic presentation if there isn't a technical pause. Where are we? Okay. So here on the Folio site, I wanted to talk quickly about it's just a small kind of anecdote around Trudy Cooper, who was someone we had a chance to interview and has since sort of become quite close friends with. But what really kind of stood out for me was when Trudy brought in their photos of their sort of first time at one of the early Oz Comic Cons in the 90s. And for me, this is where the drift became kind of real. It left the pages and it left the website and got into my personal life. And because I remember this conference, this convention as well from when I was a 17-year-old. And there was this lovely moment where looking at this and seeing these elements in the background, like issue 1 comics, seeing Tim McEwen and his Greener Pastures comic, watching them table and knowing this community and how they've grown up and how embedded these people are now in the community still. But seeing this sort of express into these other photos where you can see Tim and people and Trudy selling their wares. And this became something that was quite fun because not only when I was recently at a record store in Armidale, the guy who was selling records and comics pulled out his Oz Comics pin. And there was this lovely moment where the drift became real. It literally left the pages of these interview processes and into other people's lives. And so understanding that these small moments are existing outside, not just here, but outside of the community in this context was really a powerful thing for me. And I think, are we moving to Pat now? Is that right? Okay, Pat's on. I'll stop sharing.
Hello, everybody. Just give me a sec. Oh, look, the moment in the folio that I would like to share is from Bruce's interview, which I did the line edit of, and I also did quite a bit of the photo editing of. And so I really spent about 6 weeks with this quite a long interview that we'd made with Bruce Mutard, and Gabe had done a really excellent job of just conducting the interview in a way that everybody felt like safe. And Bruce kind of was talking about in this section about working on volumes of a graphic novel that ended up being left behind. And I feel like this is a sort of an experience that's happened to me in my life as well. This idea of sort of grieving over a project that you couldn't complete, and I really I was really moved by this story, and it really helped me completely reconsider Bruce's entire oeuvre. So this would be a good one to look at. So it's time for the next segment. Who's in charge of that? I think it's Jacket Pat. I better. It's Jacket Pat. Hang on, I've just got to get changed. This is supposed to happen off camera, but okay. How are we looking? Are we good? Are we good? No pink things up here. Okay, let's go.
We're good if we're supposed to be seeing Gabe's screen. Oh, here we go.
Hello, everybody. It's time for some trivia. Thanks. You notice I've got a moustache. It's a bit dodgy. Oh, so's the jacket. Let's move on to a question, will we? Let's read some trivia questions. How do I move on? Hang on, 1 second. 1 second. Oh, yellow screen. Oh, and here's a picture of Gabe interviewing Gavin Ongthan in Perth. What a beautiful moment. So, Gavin Ongthan, West Australian author who became a viral internet sensation with his series Zen Pencils. Since he's moved on to the heady market of graphic novels for kids. Over the course of our research, we've learned that early in his career, he was inspired to make comics because at one point he had to share a bedroom. What did Gavin Ongthan have to share a bedroom with? Was it A, a masked vigilante? Was it B, a moldy collection of Foot Rot Flats comics? Was it C, a printing press? Or D, a Loonig? I'm going to ask Kristen. What do you think, Kristen? A, B, C, or D? What's your pick?
I think it's clearly A.
Clearly A, a masked vigilante. Nothing creepy about that. Oh no, did I stop that share?
No, it's still
No,
going.
no, no, it's all good.
All good.
The answer, of course, is C, a printing press. Gavin Than's dad ran a print shop and had various different machines which were stored and used in his bedroom, which is completely illegal. You can read about this in Gavin's interview. And then now let's move on to the next section. What's the next section?
Thank you, Pat. I think the next section will be started by Bernard,
Wow.
who I know is here.
I'm here.
Yay.
Hi,
Okay, I'll
Bernard.
bow out and leave it to you, Bernard.
Hello, all. How do I nominate that I'm the man on the screen? Do you do that, Kristen?
I think it's just happening.
Oh, it's happening. It's happening. It's happening live. All right. Well,
You don't have to worry about that.
I don't have to worry about that. You're
Don't you worry about that.
That's beautiful. I love that. Thanks, Kristen. Thanks so much. So I'm just going to start talking, and then I'll appear, which will be like magic. Welcome. Yeah, Trudy. Hi. Welcome everyone to the Comics Makers panel of this launch. Yes, my name's Bernard, and you saw me in the drawing by. So you don't need me to be on screen because you saw the drawing of me by Liz before, and so I'm just bringing that suspender energy. It's just a bit suspended at the moment. But yeah, so we're going to talk about two creators. I'm in Melbourne on Wurundjeri country, and I am actually part of the Folio team. Although I've been like kept in the basement, or like Harry, what's his face? So my part of the project has been a PhD research in the creative writing department at Melbourne Uni, with Liz and Ronnie as my supervisors, wonderful supervisors. And my PhD was, as you all want to know, about place production by Australian comics texts. And half of it is a comics text called The Devil Collects. Should I check? Am I on screen for other people, or?
Yeah, but
Yeah, I
I'm
am.
not sure what view you have, but
Okay, but I am on.
that's right.
You can see me.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. That's all I want to know. Okay, so right now, though, we're going to hear from three fellow comics makers who are all associated with the Folio project in different ways, different modes. And so essentially, are you ready for this? My comics curious friends, this is a panel consisting of panelists who are in fact panelists. All right. So thank you very much, Guy. Appreciate it. First of all, we are going to speak. I'm going to speak to the magnificent Meg O'Shea, who was just credited by Liz as being one of the greatest people in the world. So that's good. Meg is a Korean adoptee comic maker based in Sydney on unceded Darug country. Hello, Meg.
Hi. Feeling good.
Good to see you. So you are part of the Folio team as a research assistant, which means that you do a bunch of things, interviewing comics makers and taking photos and other stuff. What's that other stuff, Meg, that you did?
Oh, just a bunch of random stuff whenever it was needed. So yeah, like you mentioned, I did get to help out with some interviews in Sydney, Hobart, and Perth. I went to Perth for the first time. Spent a lot of time in a poorly air-conditioned room with Gabe taking photos of a lot of the artifacts people had brought in. Pat mentioned before, I put together some initial designs for the site before we handed them off to the very cool people at Public and Supermarket who could actually make websites properly to turn it into what we wanted. And yeah, a bit of editing, working out where images should go, buying zines, a whole lot of data entry. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And are you the Instagrammerer? Is that your job or thing or gig, or is
Oh
everybody do that?
yeah. Yeah, I've also been doing the social media stuff recently. So it's mostly just been me going through a lot of videos and photos and getting super nostalgic and then making posts that occasionally have typos in them.
Nice.
Yeah, I
Nice.
hate Instagram.
Yeah, but
Um
also spelling. Who cares spelling? Like,
yeah, yeah,
about the
sure.
drawing.
Sure.
Um, all right, I'm just warming you up, Meg, because I want to ask a real question now. Which is this. What has it meant for your comics making, like the stuff that you do on pages or screens or however you do it, to hear and work with these tales and interviews and images? Has it shifted or just informed the way that you do stuff at all?
Yeah, it's definitely informed it. I spent maybe way too long thinking about how to answer this properly in a way that wouldn't leave me just rambling for hours, and I'm not sure that I've worked it out, but everything I've encountered as part of this project has been so incredibly valuable. Like everyone we've interviewed or anyone who's contributed writing has just been so so bloody generous in what they've chosen to share.
Wait a minute. Everybody? Like everybody? Really?
I feel like everybody.
Wow. That's
That's
great.
what it feels like to me. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, maybe my judgment's impaired right now because I'm just shitting myself in nerves, but yeah, I'd say everybody.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but yeah, like people have been so generous inviting us into our practices, and it's kind of felt like an invitation into this parts of the community that have supported them as well that I had no idea about. So that's been like, really wonderful to see and affirming because, I've comics has been my main thing for like 10 years. And even though I have I have friends who make comics. I occasionally leave the house to go to events, like I'm part of this research project, but I still feel green as hell a lot of the time because of that kind of fungal nature of the community, because of, all of the informal networks that had to form in response to kind of lack of a more like, developed or otherwise, formalized industry or whatever that we've got going here. And just being able to hear how people have managed to like maintain the joy, and or the passion or the obsession or whatever it's been that attracted them to this kind of like, often underestimated but it like incredibly powerful medium in the first place has just been so just inspiring is like a crap word, but like heartening, like just I don't know, just seeing people from like parts of the community I never even knew existed, just because, um, just just kind of sharing sharing how they've negotiated struggles that seem to be common to everyone. Like, there've been people who've taken years off their life doing community organizing stuff, like like putting together an anthology, or like, arranging drawing events just so you've got friends to draw with, or like, arranging a whole bloody awards ceremony to kind of elevate all the amazing talent you see around you that you think needs more recognition. But also just on a personal level, like the myriad of ways people have found to kind of do life and comics, or also equally importantly realize when life and comics are not necessarily compatible, have had to like have realized the kind of love affair with a particular project, or their practice entirely, or like their publication project or whatever is something that's just not tenable anymore, and just being able to say that as well, which is equally important. And I guess like just overall, like it feels like making comics is hard. Making comics is bloody hard, and it can feel bloody isolating a lot of the time. But just being able to hear people who know the difficulties of it, and like is still maintaining a joy, provides a way forward that is difficult to otherwise access. And I feel like very lucky that every one of these interviews kind of felt like the best like post zine fair, like D&M at the pub you could possibly ask for, except you get to see like the the little pieces of ephemera people have held onto as well. And I'm hoping that anyone who encounters the site also gets that from it as well, because you can go to a 1,000 post-zine fair beers and not get this deep with people as well, because you're all tired because you've been up until 3 a.m. stapling stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I read a whole lot of notes that were going to help me be more articulate than this. But
it's perfect, Meg. It's perfect. Thank you so much. That I think that topic, that heading, life and comics, the impossible, perfect, beautiful formula, that whatever that is, that as being something that is underneath foliocomics.com, and under that is life and comics. It feels like that's what embraces the project. And that other thing you were saying about one has a gang, you have a little group, but the idea, this project allows you to go, I know that person knows that person. Oh my gosh, it's like, like those tracks across this, it's really big place, country sort of thing. But you've got, I think it's remarkable. So thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing, your next book.
oh God, come on, bro.
All right, have a day off. Excellent. I'm going to move. Thank you very much, Meg. If this was live, we'd all be clapping you like very, very loud. Thank you. The next person I want to speak to is Sparkling Safta Ahmed, who is thank you. Thanks, Aaron, for the clapping. Particular thrill for me to introduce a Saft, because I'm a part of a graphic novel development cabal. I don't even know what to call it, project called 12 Panels Press. And we at 12 Panels Press, which is Liz and me and a publisher called Erica Wagner, published Safta's graphic novel, Still Alive, in 2021. And it won all these awards, and it's really, really good. And it's called Still Alive, Notes from Australia's Immigration Detention System. So Safta, hello, Safta.
Hi.
There you are, Saf. Hi. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Lovely to be here. I'm zooming in from Guringai country in Hornsby in northwest Sydney.
Great. Safta, you provided one of the essays for the early launch or early version of the folio, and your illustrated essay is called "Why Comics, Australian Comics and the Autographic Turn." And in your essay, there's a comics bit, which is called Why Comics, and then the words bit, an essay, which is called Australian Comics and the Autographic Turn. And as a person who's just made a PhD, assembled from both comics and writing, it's great to see these modal tongs that you're using to reach into the salad. But first up, can you explain what is the autographic turn? Is it like drawings of cars or something? Or
Sure, yes. So it was a real honor to be asked to give an essay to Folio and to think of something that I wanted to write about. And I love autobio comics. I think that the comic medium is so perfectly suited for autobiographical work, which I'll go into. The term autographic was coined by Gillian Whitlock, an academic, I think back in about 2005, 2006. And in my interpretation, it refers to, I guess, the rise of comics that are autobiographical or sort of autobio in nature. But it's a comic that also has or conveys an awareness about what autobio bring when we make an autobio comic. So I guess the origins of this goes back to underground and independent comics from the 60s, of course, the underground movement in the US and comics in Europe and Japan. And as I say, it's sort of what makes it special is that I guess it interrogates the way we put ourselves together for the reader and lets the reader in on that construction. So I guess probably the most famous example that I could refer to for this would be Art Spiegelman's Mouse, in which Spiegelman draws himself interviewing his father to make the book. So visiting him, sitting down, interviewing him, but it also shows their arguments. And in turn, it shows the deep intergenerational trauma and the difficulties in their relationship and everything that he's inherited from his dad. So I think it's a form that allows the audience to sort of peek behind the curtain and show, in a sense, how this process of constructing or breaking down the self, how it happens, rather than just some kind of straight telling of a person's life, if that makes sense.
yeah,
And I think a really important part of that, which I kind of allude to in the comic part of my essay, is that you're getting it from the artist. When one person draws and writes a comic, there's something really individualistic about that. It has this very strongly affective dimension. You're getting the brain, the eye, and the hand of the artist all pouring onto the page. And so when that person is depicting themselves and their lives and their relationship to the world, there's something really I guess quintessential about that. It's perfectly suited to comics, as I said.
yeah. It's that feeling I have of like the pencil or the stylus or something being like a lightning, this person is like a weather system, and this lightning rod is drawing from this being and taking information, both physical, mental, notional, and playing it out on a page. It's incredibly weirdly direct, or like
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
of those things in a hospital. Beep 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 beep, beep, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I think I guess it's an extension of that passion that we have for comics. And it's such a unique form, and I think it's also it conveys so beautifully in the Australian scene the kind of diversity that we have as well, in the Australian comic scene.
Yeah, okay. That was my next query to you, is about autographic specifically as an approach to comics, and how that hits with Australian makers. Yeah, that sense of the wide group of people we have here.
Yeah, yeah, I think
It's about voice, right? It's about voice.
yeah, exactly. And it gives you access to experiences that are very rarely, I think, given a platform. in mainstream media. Actually, there's two things I would say about it. One is the context, and one, I guess, is the virtue of it, which is what I talk about in the essay. I kind of hint at the context, and it's not entirely, maybe it's a good thing, but it's the fact that obviously we're all in this cultural ecosystem. Comics don't have much money anyway. Most comics aren't funded. We all want more status. We want to be invited to literary festivals and to have this form appreciated to the extent that it deserves. But having said that, where comics do get funded, there is sort of an expectation which kind of lends itself to autobiocomics. And I don't know if that's always a good thing. So for instance, funding bodies, grant bodies, cultural institutions, they're inherently conservative in the choices that they make. We've witnessed over the last 2+ years cultural institutions showing extreme cowardice and timidity when it comes to artists who are speaking about the Gaza genocide, for instance. And so when they're given a range of projects, they'll inevitably go with the safe option. And so for a funding body or a cultural institution, the safe option is usually a story in which I think the creator brings what's called lived experience, and I think that is something which is often favored, and that lends itself to autobio stories. And so I think on one hand it's positive because there is a window there for more autobio work to get supported. But on the other hand, I don't think it's the only thing we should be doing, and we don't. And I think it's important to explore genre and to explore things outside of that. So on one hand, I guess the context invites autobio stories, but we need to be wary of the sort of climate of conservatism that also drives that, in a sense. So I guess that's a positive and a negative way of looking at it.
Sure.
But definitely, if you can get your autobio comic up and funded, go for it. I want to see more of them. They bring a lot of value to the world. And in that sense, I think, the Australian scene, not that I've been in it for very long, I'm not one of these old guys who's been around since the 80s following Australian comics.
Give it another couple of
decades. Even though I am getting old. But what I think you notice in the last 10 years, particularly 15 years, is an explosion of diverse voices using autobiocomics to insert really important points of view, and that helps us expand our understanding and definition of Australian comics in a sense, and of Australian nationality, because a lot of these diverse voices in a way push back against national narratives, and that's always a good thing because nationalism is often a hegemonic force. So it's great to see this fecundity in the Australian scene.
I would say fungal fecundity.
Fungal fecundity, I like that. Someone should make that the title of their next serialized book.
Yeah. And I'll move on to the next chat now, but I would just observe, Safdar, that your work, like Persepolis by Marjan Satrapi, like Palestine by Joe Sacco, uses autobio, but uses that as a way into discussion of big questions, political issues. It is possible to. One of the uses of the autographic is to grapple with the things that
definitely, yeah. And I think often when it's done that way, it's not just about you, but it's also the historical forces that act through us, and the influence of our families and the influence of our social conditioning and how we push back against it. It's all of these other fascinating things that give you a kind of critical sort of distance or a self-reflexivity to the world around you. Definitely.
Magnificent. Thanks, Safdar. So good to see you.
No worries. Cheers.
Okay, and final maker that we're going to hear from today as part of this panel, this creators panel, this makers panel, is the astonishing Ashka. Ashka is a comic artist, illustrator, educator, and science communicator based in Boorloo, Perth. They're originally from Poland, and they are left-handed, like Pat Grant, our quizmaster. and they're one of the Folio interview subjects. Ask all as maybe Ronnie was talking about before, the interviews are chunked up into little chapters, little chunks, and Ashkar's interview has 11. And they're cross-referenced by theme, so you can do that drift that everybody's talking about. Ashkar, hello.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Hey, there you are. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Nice. Where you are is nice.
Folio is lovely, yes.
Now, I wanted to start by saying that you were interviewed by Gabe, Clark, and Meg at the State Library of Western Australia in 2022, 5 years ago. Can you remember even that interview?
4. I thought it was 3, but I think
okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I can remember it. But sorry, I just have to interject and say the left-handed thing.
Yes.
Every single character I ever draw is left-handed.
So
in my universe, left-handers rule. So
okay, nice.
Say the power of visual storytelling. But yeah, no, I do remember it. I was extremely excited.
That makes sense.
Extremely excited about it, and I first of all want to say amazing that it's out there. Like, I'm so impressed at seeing the final product. It is such a beautiful testament to all the amazing minds behind the creating of comics in Australia, and you see such amazing views into these minds and the multitude facets in which the comics get created. And for me, it's an amazing resource because I work a lot with educators, so to be able to point them to something that shows them the value and the intellectual kind of capacity of comics is so incredible. So I'm looking forward to using this so much more.
Great. Safta, can I just ask you to turn off your microphone? Yeah, great. Okay.
Yeah, so the interview was fantastic. I got to meet Meg and Gabe, which was absolutely lovely. And the fun thing was that at first I was kind of thinking, wow, I've been chosen for this amazing interview. Do I really have that much to say about comics? So as always, I went to look for data, and I dug through all my things and papers and historical things. And I realized, I've been making comics in Perth alone for 20 years. And there was all these fantastic bits and pieces to complement it. And I made these nerdy graphs showing to myself, really mainly, how many comics I made each year during that process. And I loved how Gabe and Meg got really excited about it. Like, there's a video of this silly graph in the interview. And, it's so, it's reaffirming on one hand, but also it's like a really nice mirror to myself of the work that I've done that maybe I wasn't thinking about in that holistic way. And so putting these pieces together and seeing, the work that was done was great. Also, I think talking about being in Perth and how my journey has evolved made me reflect on the communities that I was kind of seeking out and being part of during that time. And when I first arrived in Perth, which was about 2 decades ago, the communities were quite seasonal. They were based around a 24-hour comic, and we would have some limited opportunities to then get our works together and publish them and promote them. But then later, this changed, and now I am very proud to be helping out with the Perth Comic Arts Festival, which fosters those kind of relationships and comic makers throughout the year. And of course, you can see that because, WA Comics are rocking it right now, can I say?
Yes.
But it was, it's been really nice to reflect on that, to see my practice in this holistic way under the umbrella of comics, which maybe I wasn't doing that before. So the interview was very, very important to me personally, as well as just being a really good journey down the memory lane.
And I'm sure it was just like there was a lot of laughter in the room as you were talking as well. I do want to ask specifically because in your interview you discussed this long work in progress, Death and Borewater. Have you been doing more work on that, or is that sort of on hold at the moment? Just on the comics and life sort of question.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. This is a work that I think I can easily say I've been working on for a decade now. Yeah. So it's very close to my heart. And, I kind of like along the lines of what Safta was saying, I'm kind of trapped in this, what I call the publishing pipeline. And it's not like I publish that much, but because my income is tied around what I creatively make, I can only, put certain things into my timeline where I have the deadlines and then they get published. And after they get published, I have these opportunities to go and educate and make money from incursions. And so it's very hard to make time and fight for time for projects that are by its nature unpublishable. And, that's the beauty of this project. It's so strange and wonderful, but I can't see any avenue for it to be out in the shop next week. And so yes, it's really hard, but it's super important for the soul and for the life and for the reason that I am a comics creator. So I had a great chance to work on the project on 2024 Comics Art Workshop, which, by the way, I want to shout out with my T-shirt. I don't know if you can see that, but that was amazing. And the art workshop was led by our esteemed leaders, Meg and Finn, which was wonderful. I got a lot of wonderful feedback on that work by fellow comic makers. And I'm currently working on it a little bit more right now, trying to push it forward. But yes, it is a real, it's kind of a privilege to have that time, but also such a joy and life reaffirming energy to be able to work on a project that you truly love, but might never really see that many eyes on it.
Ashka, thank you very much for your talk, being open, telling us about that, and giving us little and talk about the Comics Arts Workshop and its remarkable work in helping people getting graphic novels. So we're going to because I know Pat's got more quiz to quiz us with, so we're going to go back to Pat, but just before we do that, I would like to use a traditional Melbourne Naam cry of a celebration that we do at comics events down here, and it's the word huzzah yelled out 3 times very quickly, but very quietly if you're at work, perhaps. So to the comics. To the comics folio, to the folio comics, huzzah, huzzah, huzzah! Over to you, Pat. Huzzah. Or maybe Pat's there he is.
Huzzah, Bernard!
Huzzah, Pat! Huzzah!
Where am I? Where's what's going on here? Oh, there I am. It's bloody hot in this jacket. Darwin country in the sun under Gabe's deck. Okay, more trivia. We ready for some more trivia? Get your fingers ready to type A, B, C, or D into the chat. Should we go? Let's go. I'd like you, of course, all of you know Mandy Ord. Mandy Ord is a treasure of Australian comics. Her work is almost always autobiographical, and because of that, everyone here in Australian comics desperately wants to appear in one of her stories. So the trivia question is this: what is the most reliable way to get a cameo in a Mandy Ord comic? A, buy all of your fruit and vegetables and coffee in the suburb of Eltham and make sure you're horrible to the staff. B, scream at Mandy Ord from the backseat of a Subaru as it burns down Sydney Road. D, attempt to scam Mandy Ord via email. Oh, sorry, that was C. Or D, simply make an appointment to meet Mandy for coffee. What do you think the answer is? Here's the answer. It's a trick question. There are all ways to get into Mandy Ord's comics, but the most reliable one is D. Because if you make an appointment to see Mandy, there's a small chance that she might be late. And if she's late, she will have such an outrageous emotional experience that it may become the material for her next graphic novel. How do we know this? Well, we interviewed Mandy, and guess what? She was late for her interview. The first story she told us was about being late and how being late makes her feel, and how it somehow unlocks her creative capacity. That's it for the trivia break. What's next? What's next?
Thank you, Pat. Next is questions from the crowd, who I feel like I can almost hear actually from this chat. This is a livelier than usual webinar in the chat. But we do, yes. So like I was saying earlier, please put questions in the Q&A, which some people have done. So don't put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A. And there is one that we can probably, I know that this one's been answered by text, but I'll read it out loud for everybody's benefit. So James has asked, does this storytelling continue to be added to in the future? Are there resources for that? Can you keep it alive Folio team?
We are publishing throughout the year more essays. More interviews. But I'll let Liz lead that question, I think.
Okay.
We're going to keep trying to scrape money from our institutions in order to keep this project going as long as we can. We do have about as many interviews as are on the site already. We have about that same number in the bank ready to go. And they'll be kind of drip fed throughout the year. This is a marketing scheme because apparently if we do that, it means that more people will sort of come to the site that way. And it's more for you to look forward to. So every few weeks during the year, there will be a new interview released. The other thing we're going to do is commission a whole bunch of responses to the site, as in people who have done the drift, have encountered something interesting. Maybe it's made them remember something from their life in comics, and they want to write a little piece about it that has a little image attached to it. And then we'll publish that, and we'll use this cool methodology that we've developed now over the last 5 years and tag them all up so that those essays and the new interviews will then all become part of the fungal network, which I know Josh Santospirito is a huge fan of that phrase now. But that's our plan. So yes, there will be more. At some point, the money will run out, and then we'll just be really sad. But for now, we're going to keep it going.
Thanks, Liz. Importantly, is there a dog at Gabe's place? Can we see the dog?
Scrabble.
Scrabble.
Grabs.
Scrabble.
It's a question from Campbell.
We'll
And there
get
was
it.
an
Keep
anonymous
going.
question, which while you get the dog, go. I feel, Liz, just checking, this has been answered in what you were just saying. How do people get involved with the curation? Do they have to be part of academia? But it sounds like you have a sort of method for involving new material that can be volunteered from people in the community.
Totally. You certainly don't have to be an academic.
Great. We got the dog?
Yeah, he made an appearance. He's a bit heavy.
Okay.
Come on, Scrabble.
Oh,
There he is.
You're having fun.
You're having fun.
You're having fun. You like this.
very good. Lucy's wondering, the essays that were on the placeholder site, because there was a site for years while you were developing this public folio site, will those essays be migrated across to this new one? Yes.
They already are.
Wacko. And a question from Nat. Are there going to be some interviews in the Sunshine State in Queensland? There are so many creatives in Queensland. Come up to Comic Street and see.
Absolutely, Nat. We knew you were going to ask this question, Nat, because we're very aware of the fact that we haven't been to Brisbane yet and been to Meanjin. Maybe I'll throw to Ronnie, who's our Meanjin resident. Well,
Rep.
not anymore, but Meanjin rep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you for people should always ask about Brisbane. We do have some Brisbane material that's kind of ready to go sometime during the year, and we've also got an essay that has been commissioned that will be about the Brisbane comic scene, kind of 2000s and 2010s. I would love at some point to talk to the DV people. And also, I think, yeah, like Liz said, we would love to actually go and talk to everyone. So I think we all have like little dreams of ways that we want to build out the site. But Brisbane is one of the kind of lesser represented things at the moment.
Thank you. Thanks, Ronnie. Here's one I'm interested to know the answer to as well, actually, from Bruce. Are the essays that are in your Palgrave book, which has been mentioned today, it's another really exciting kind of outcome of this research. So there'll be a book, a real kind of heavy and lovely to hold book. Are those essays going to appear on the site?
Over to you, Ronnie.
Yeah. So one of them, one of them is on the site. Brenton McKenna's kind of wonderful history of his kind of journey to publishing Ubby's Underdog books. And Liz's essay Obsession and Unreasonable Love is in the book in a different form to what it is on this website as well. So there's some shared material, but the scholarly book published by Palgrave is kind of its own thing. It's a really intended for university libraries because it's a very expensive book, and actually to get a license to republish something on the website is an eye-watering figure that I won't name because it's kind of comical and strange. But we thought it was really important to pay that for Brenton's sort of narrative history of his journey in Australian comics. And I would encourage people to kind of go to university libraries and ask them to order in either the digital version or the print copy of that book, because there's beautiful comics essays by Bruce Mutard and Stuart Medley, and one by Sarah Firth, and lots of wonderful critical essays by I know people who are in the chat as well that cover like how Australian comics kind of merge with other bits of the Australian creative workforces in unexpected ways. There's publishing perspectives. There's essays by people about how they've kind of done weird experiments that have fed into how they make their comics. And there's really great analyses of comics as well. But it's kind of a satellite project.
Thanks, Ronnie. Some people have cleverly already asked their libraries to buy it in. That's the way to access it. There is an anonymous question about the Oz Comics network, that graphic. Is that available online? And it looks, yeah, I can tell from your face. Are you also trying to figure out what that Oz Comics network graphic would be? Yeah. Whoever asked that question.
Are you talking about the thing that I drew? It's sort of one of the first images we saw.
Yeah.
On that very first PowerPoint slide.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Is it on the website? I don't think so. Put it there somewhere.
Send me an email. I'll send it to you. It's really a pitching document for our project, though. Yeah.
Okay. Questions are drying up unless here we go. Any merchandising plans? T-shirts, tote bags, tea towels.
Yeah. Screen
pads.
adaptations, multiverse. Yeah.
I would like a sheet set, like a quilted sheet set with a grid of all of the headshot illustrations that we commissioned. That would be beautiful. See that somebody gets that done, please.
There is a question from Holly about making comics events funding and this is in the chat, not in the Q&A, about making them more accessible for people with disabilities. And there is a spectrum. So I guess that's something that I think comes up in people's practice as to their personal experiences and in the context of the interviews. So a lot of the people we interviewed, I guess, have their own kind of personal sort of health kind of experiences. And yeah, so I think that really it came up around in those places, like what's people's experience with that. And that's kind of how I reflect on that question. Anyone else?
If there are no more questions, we could go to a quiz break.
Ta-da! Is there emotional support?
We do need some music in between.
Oh my God, here he comes. Here he comes. Sorry. He's just going stage left. Exit stage right.
Okay.
Left.
And I gather the quiz is for everybody in the chat to answer, but perhaps if panelists would like to answer, I reckon they're allowed to come off mute and have a go.
Yeah.
Okay, time for a trivia break, everybody. Oh, it's so very exciting. We're drawing to a close. Let's see if we can get in before we run out of time. Does anybody know this character? This is Matt Wynn. He's a New York-based illustrator born in Western Sydney who spent a long time talking to us about the importance of ink in his practice. Ink. when he was first getting into comics, he told us this story that he was looking for the right ink to use. So he traveled to Liverpool, Western Sydney, where there was this old big comic book store called Phantom Zone. And underneath that store, he found an art supplies store that dealt in arcane and mysterious creative equipment. So, in a locked cabinet behind a counter, he found the dark liquid that he was looking for. What was this liquid? Was it A, a mealy paste of crushed up carbon, animal fat, and incense? Was it B, a tincture created from the burned bones of the nerds who delved too deeply into the Phantom Zone and starved to death back there? C, a slippery black fluid made partly from ground up shells of insects? Or D, the blackest thing in all of Sydney, the shriveled heart of a local real estate developer? Let's see what our panel thinks. Bernard, Ashka, Saf, anyone want to throw down? Meg?
It's got to be C. It's got to be C. It's made from the cochineal beetle, the original beetle of the comic book makers. A lot of comic book makers actually just chew them up and spit the stuff into a little bowl and then draw directly from that. See, it's a little.
Anyone else want to throw down? Well, Bernard, you've spoiled the fun, really, because the answer is, of course, C.
Oh, yeah! What do I get, Pat? What do I get?
India ink, which is the ink that professionals used, contains shellac, which is made from the ground up shells of insects. It was a trick question because Sumi ink is A, a merely paste of crushed up carbon, animal fat, and incense.
Those Japanese think of everything.
Not archival, though.
Oh.
Not archival.
All right. Well, in that case, I'll stop using it. Yay!
That wraps it up, everybody. I think I can take this jacket off.
That concludes today's proceedings. Although I can't finish before saying this was a really beautiful crowd. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And I wish that we were going to post-scene fair drinks right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so much silent applause going on while everybody's been talking. And I really want to congratulate you. I want to congratulate the comics team. You have made something that we are all very, very proud of, that you can be so proud of. And it's a beautiful thing. You've made a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
We're going to keep our eyes on it as it continues over this next year with more essays, and then hopefully can evolve in fungal ways. Continue to grow while we're sleeping.
Thanks, Kristen and Creative Australia, for support and help. It's good.
So we have a tradition, guys, in our meetings. Have you seen the film Totoro? My Neighbor Totoro? There's this scene where these little girls are standing in the garden doing this. Da, 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 da. And it's just encouraging these plants to grow. Well, our project kept getting out of control, so we started ending our meetings in doing what we called the reverse Totoro.
Funnel.
Which was a mantra to remind us to not be expansive in our decision making, but to get this thing done. And we're here. It's happened today. So I think we've earned this reverse Totoro team.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
I love you all
for coming. I love you all.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao.